welcome to Big Trips, Little Kids. My name is Heather Eady. I'm an accountant in my 40s and mum to 2 young children. Like pretty much everyone else in the world, I love a holiday, and I always want to make sure I get the most out of my annual leave, whether that's sitting on a beach or road tripping across America. But I know that many of my friends who previously loved to travel have found it hard to plan for and manage their trips with their children. So I wanted to share some trips that we've done and hopefully make your holiday planning easier. I promise also to share the bad experiences so you can learn from my mistakes. Ultimately, I hope to inspire you and make travel easier for you and your family. I'd also appreciate it if you could follow and subscribe to the podcast, and please do send any honest feedback. Hi, welcome back from the Easter break. To be honest, I'm not even sure it's a break for anyone. I mean, it's certainly not a break for adults with small kids at home, and I'm not even sure it's that much of a break for the kids. They just seem so desperate to be with their friends. But welcome back anyway. I hope the teachers had a good break, because it's certainly a well-deserved break for them. I know I find it hard with 2 kids, and I cannot imagine what it'd be like to have a whole class of them. So we're on episode 15, and I've decided to tackle the topic, which is one of the things that I'm often asked on forums, asked by my friends, and that is how to manage an airport with small children. So here's my top 10 tips for managing children at airports. Number 1 is not actually to do with the airport itself. It's something to do in advance of the airports, and that's to play airports at home. We love playing airports, so we do the check-in desk, the security, right through to boarding. I found it's a great game for all sorts of ages of children. It was a bit depressing when we had to play it constantly during COVID, but now that that's done, it is a good fun game. And actually for adults, it's quite an easy one, because there's a lot of sitting around and waiting at an airport, and you can order your drinks in the bar and on the plane, and that's always quite fun as well. We found that just doing that prepared our kids for all stages of the airport. It lets them practice scenarios of things that can go wrong, like your bag's too heavy to check in, or you got beeped at security and your bag's got to go the other way, or you got pulled aside for extra scanning. And that means that when these scenarios actually happen at the airport, it's not daunting at all, because they've practiced it many times. My 3-year-old usually walks pretty confidently through the scanners. My 6-year-old wasn't fazed at all when on holiday. Over Easter we were called aside for extra scanning. He'd practiced that at home, he'd played it at home. He knew that it was probably a random check, but it could be he's got something in his pockets, and he wasn't fazed by either. So yeah, just something that gets everyone familiar with it, because it's quite a strange process really if you've never gone through it and never thought about it. So just practicing it and playing it we found really helps. It's also quite good because everyone gets excited practicing for a holiday. I mean, out of all the kind of kids games you can do, it's something that adults enjoy as well. My second tip is to do with checking in, and that's to get yourself some large stroller travel bags. Whether you're going to leave your stroller at the check-in desk or take it to the gate, we always pack it in one of the big zipper bags. We've got ones that are called InSafe. They were just off Amazon. I'm sure there's plenty of other brands as well. And we found that while those bags have actually themselves got several, quite substantial marks, a couple of small tears on them through our travel, the goods inside have never had any sort of issue. The other good thing about packing strollers or car seats in travel bags is that you can usually actually add a few extra things to it. So we often add pull toys, or we add nappies. Nothing heavy, but just some bits and bobs that are children associated paraphernalia that you wouldn't normally have. No one's ever asked us about it at check-in. No one's even looked in the bags. I suppose you do run a risk of somebody saying you're not allowed to add that in, but we found it quite a handy way of taking some extra bulky goods as well. Number 3, and this is a bit of a retro one, but it's to get actually physical printed boarding passes. Now, obviously it doesn't work if you're on EasyJet or Ryanair or any of the other low-cost airlines where they won't print without charging you, but if you're on a more traditional carrier, we often actually ask for the printed boarding passes. I'm always the custodian of all the actual important documents on family holidays. I've got the passports, I've got all the boarding passes on my phone in an app. I've usually got them downloaded as well. But if you ask at check-in, you can usually still get a printed boarding pass. So we let the kids have that and save them knowledge that it's not actually needed to board the plane, but it gives them an idea of responsibility that they'll have as adults when they're going through an airport, and also just the sense of having their own ticket. Of course, as they get older, they get much more interested in seat row numbers, destination information reading, gate numbers, understanding all the information that's on there. So we found that also makes them feel that they're really part of the process and they've got a responsibility in the travel as well. Tip number 4, also about bags, and that is to take as few as possible. I mean, when I used to travel on my own with work for long haul, I used to just take a handbag, and I try and apply that sort of principle as much as possible to travelling with a family. The reason for it is that children just never end up carrying their own bags. They always say they're going to, and it just never seems to happen for us. So we always end up carrying pretty much everything between my husband and myself. We've never invested in those trunky bags for kids for exactly that reason, but we do take a car seat trunky with us for the elder one now, and put his toys inside that, but we try and make sure that we can just always carry everything between the two of us, that we've got enough clips to clip things together as well, so you can, carry two rucksacks linked together rather than having to carry two separate bags. I just find that it's a long time for the kids to carry stuff. If they've loaded them up themselves, they're probably too heavy, and it's often long distances at airports when they're kind of running around looking at other things, maybe tired because they've got up at the wrong time of day, etc. I would say just always make sure it's stuff that two people can carry, so you're not having to have that fight as you're trying to get through the airport. Another bit of airport prep that we do is also to watch videos on YouTube or to get an old-fashioned map of the airport from the internet. My eldest is quite into maps, so it lets us show him where things are, but it also lets us plan out what we're going to do, where we're going to go. We always take refillable water bottles, so it helps us to understand where we're going to get water, where we'll eat, where we could sit and watch planes, where the seating is, where it looks like quiet seating, any sort of soft play or anything we know about in advance. And it just helps us make sure we're not doubling back on ourselves. There's always a lot of walking in an airport anyway, but I find if you've got a plan and you know where you're going, there's not as much wandering around, kind of going in circles with everyone getting a bit confused and lost, or maybe even getting kind of overconfident in their surroundings and then running off. So we always print out a map or watch on YouTube so we know what's there and we know the lie of the land. As you go through security, my top tip would be to make sure that you've got all the electronics or any baby milk or anything like that in the one bag. That just means that everyone else can get through the conveyor belt really easily, and then you've got one adult who's got the bag with all the stuff in it. They can just basically empty out their whole bag, because you're probably going to have iPads and snacks and water and all sorts for babies as well, and it just means you can get everything out really easily, put it on the conveyor, and you're not having to spend so long checking everyone's bags when you're at the airport. It's also quite handy if you don't want your child to know that you've got the iPad or gaming device, so you're trying to save that for later on a long haul flight, because then everyone can go through and you can just do that yourself at the end without them seeing, hopefully. Baby food does always take a little bit of extra time at the scanner, so doing all that in the one bag as well means that if someone has to stop and wait for it to go through the scanner and someone else has to go to the toilet, then there's only one person held up by waiting for it. Of course, it could be really unlucky that one of your other bags gets stopped as well, but usually we've found that they kind of go straight through and it's just the one person waiting. So you're through security, you've got all checked in, you've sorted out your bags. My tip number 7 is to buy some magazines at the airport. So we usually order in advance sticker books and activity books, and we've got all that sort of stuff in the limited bags that we've got, but we do give the kids the opportunity to go and buy a magazine at the airport. Really, on kids' magazines, they're obviously choosing the toy they like on the outside, less than the actual magazine content. Sometimes it feels like they're not even interested in the magazine content. But what it does mean is that they've got something that they're currently interested in that day that they've just picked up. And we find that they change their minds so much about what they like and what they don't like. Something I've ordered on Amazon the week before in great faith that it's going to be a big hit can absolutely be last season's fad and really not interesting for them. So letting them choose on the days means that they've just got something that they want to play with in that moment. We've usually found that the range at the airports, particularly in the UK for kids magazines, brilliant as well, actually better than our local newsagent. And it takes them some time to go through all the different magazines and choose one they want. We always say it's only one, so they kind of hum and haw a little bit about which one to get. And again, that just takes some time. It's all about trying to fill time at airports. The next thing we do, so tip number 8 to kill time, is to plan a meal. So whether it's meal time or not, we usually try and make sure our airport trips include a meal, especially if you're flying long haul. My kids won't really eat the food provided on long haul, and it's not really sufficient, and although we take all the snacks, it's good to know that they've eaten something that's usually a safe food before we get on the airplane. So we find something that serves chips or noodles or rice, make sure that everyone's absolutely full up before we get on the flight. It doesn't stop them eating non-stop on the flight, but it does mean that you are assured that they're not actually going to be super hungry, at least not for the first leg of a long flight. And of course, delays happen. So even on a short flight, you might think, oh, we'll wait till the other end and get food. I would say just always eat before you get on. Kids are usually happy to eat twice, and it just does mean that you're not having another thing to worry about or check that you've got enough stuff. We always try and have a kind of sit-down meal rather than a sandwich. part of that's me, to be honest. I'm quite a nervous flyer, so I quite like to have a glass of wine as well, just to kind of calm my nerves a bit as well before we get on the plane. So yeah, we usually try and have a sit down meal, and that again just takes a little bit of time with the ordering the food and faffing around and stops everyone running around so much. Tip number 9. If you've got a small baby, then try and take your stroller to the gate. It does give you somewhere for them to sleep if it's nap time, can help you get through the airport quite quickly, and also is a great way to carry your bags. So if you do find yourself with a young baby, which often you will, that you've got too many bags despite trying to pack lightly, that you've then got a way of pushing it all through the airport without having to carry it. In terms of getting through the airport itself, baby wearing is easiest, to be honest, because then you've got your hands free and you're not having to look for elevators and all that sort of stuff. But the advantage of being able to nap easily and take the bags meant we always took strollers to the gate when we could. But we did always take a baby carrier on the flight with us, so that if you get off at the other end and the stroller doesn't come back to you immediately, which it doesn't in many countries, then at least you can put the baby in the baby carrier, easily carry the bags and go and collect your stroller. It could be quite far away. I think it was in Denver. It was like half a mile or something ridiculous. They had signs up about it being like a joke because it was so far away. It was far away to be carrying someone. So yeah, absolutely just try and make sure that you've got a way of transporting them, and we found that strollers work quite well and you can just check them in when you get to the gate. I did see another tip that was related to that actually, where a mum was talking about taking a car seat rather than the stroller top. So if you've got one of those kind of 3-in-1s that you often have for really young babies, putting the car seat on top rather than putting the full stroller on top. And her reason for that was that then when she got to the gate, she was able to ask if they had any spare seats and sometimes take the car seat on board. There seems to be a real difference between the US and the UK on this. In the US, many of my friends, and certainly a lot of stuff I've seen on Instagram, all take the car seats on board and strap your baby or your child in the car seat on the plane. That does make quite a lot of sense to me, but in the UK it just doesn't seem to be something that we do. People usually just have infants on their lap and then toddlers, well, charging around the plane causing chaos actually, but we don't really have the car seat so much. But that does sound like a tip that could work if you're on a flight that isn't full, and if the airline are obliging and your car seat's the right type and all that sort of stuff, it might be worth something looking into if it's something that interests you. So my final tip is just to give yourself plenty of time, and in particular to get to the gate. The time that it says to get to the gate always seems to take much longer with a small child who wants to stop and look at things, and inevitably there'll be a shop or there'll be a kid's toy or something that they see on the way that they haven't seen, or a new aeroplane to look at out the window. They just don't get anywhere fast. And the other thing I found is that almost always someone in my family, usually the child, occasionally the husband, needs a poo or a pee just as you're getting towards the gate, or has a pee accident. That's always a child. Just as you're getting there, and you need to stop, spend some time fixing that, sort all that out. So we usually go to the gate as soon as it's called, whether we're going to get on immediately or whether we're going to wait a little bit and get on at the end. Just being there means you can know where you are, you've got a seat, you've got a base where you can dump all your bags. Kids can find a space that they can run around, hopefully watch the aeroplanes, and you know where the toilets are, you can get there when you need to, and then the staff also see you and know that you're ready to board. So lots of reasons just to, in my view, get there early, set off as soon as the gate comes up, and then you're at the next point in the journey. And that was it, my top 10 tips for navigating an airport with small children. Hopefully you found that useful. Please don't forget to check out my Instagram, which is bigtrips.littlekids. I share photos and videos of our trips. It's also where you can send me messages, feedback, any tips on what you've found works for your kids and your family. Next week I'll be picking up on our road trip across America, particularly taking in our time in the Catskills and Easton on our journey onwards towards Boston. Thanks again for listening. Trips, Little Kids. My name is Heather Eady. If you want to follow us on Instagram, we're at bigtrips.littlekids, and there's plenty of pictures and information there about the trips we've taken. Artwork for this podcast is by Omar Shazad at gendesign_, found on Fiverr. Music by Audio Coffee, which can be found at www.audiocoffee.net, and it's called Happy Holiday. Thanks again for listening. Bye.